The diplomatic vessel moved through the stars like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Inside the ship, Ambassador Jiwan stood before a mirror in her quarters, adjusting her uniform for the 10th time. Her hands were shaking slightly. She noticed this and forced them to stop. Today would change everything for humanity. Jiwan had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. 20 years of studying alien languages, cultural protocols, and diplomatic history. She had learned 17 different forms of greeting and memorized the customs of 5 major galactic species. Everything she had ever done had led to this single day. Earth's first official meeting with the Galactic Council. Captain Minho entered the room without knocking. They had known each other too long for formalities when alone. "We're 30 minutes out," he said quietly. His military uniform was crisp and perfect, but his eyes showed the same nervousness Jiwan felt. "The council station just appeared on our sensors. It's bigger than anything we've ever built." Dr. Hiren joined them, carrying a datapad filled with her research notes. The xenobiologist had spent months preparing biological profiles of every council species. She looked excited rather than nervous. "This is incredible," she whispered. "We're about to meet civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. Species that mastered space travel before humans even discovered fire." The 3 of them moved to the bridge together. Through the view screen, they saw it. The council chambers orbited a neutron star, a massive structure of crystal and metal that seemed to capture and bend light itself. Thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds floated around it like moths around a flame. Each ship was unique, reflecting the biology and culture of its creators. Minho's crew worked their stations with quiet efficiency. They were Earth's best, handpicked for this mission. Every person on this ship understood the weight of what they were doing. Humanity had been watching the galaxy from a distance for 50 years, ever since they had achieved faster-than-light travel. They had stayed quiet, learning, preparing. Now they were ready to introduce themselves. The council had finally sent an invitation. It had arrived 6 months ago. A simple message in perfect English. "Humanity has been observed. You are invited to present yourselves. Come alone. Come unarmed. Come in peace." Earth's governments had debated for weeks before agreeing. This was the chance they had been waiting for. As they approached the station, a docking path lit up before them. The ship followed it automatically. Guided by technology humanity barely understood, Jiwan took a deep breath and looked at her companions. "Remember, we represent everyone. Every human who ever lived. We show them our best." The docking was smooth. The airlock connected with barely a whisper of sound. Beyond the door, a corridor waited. It was beautiful in a way that made Jiwan's heart ache. The walls seemed to be made of living light, shifting through colors that had no names in human language. The gravity felt slightly wrong, adjusted to some median that suited multiple species. 2 council escorts waited for them. They were tall, insectoid creatures with too many joints in their limbs. They did not speak but gestured for the humans to follow. Minho's hand instinctively moved toward where his weapon would normally be. But he was unarmed as requested. They all were. The walk to the council chambers took 10 minutes. They passed other species in the corridors. Some ignored them completely. Others stopped to stare with whatever sensory organs they possessed. Jiwan tried to smile at them but wasn't sure if any species here would understand the gesture. The council chambers were vast. The ceiling disappeared into darkness far overhead. The floor was transparent, showing the neutron star spinning below, its surface a nightmare of physics that should not exist. Around a central platform stood 5 massive thrones, each designed for a different form of life. The council members were waiting. Jiwan had seen pictures, had studied recordings, but nothing prepared her for seeing them in person. High Arbiter Krell of the Korthan hierarchy dominated the center throne. He was 3 meters tall, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from blue to green to purple. His eyes were vertical slits, cold and reptilian. When he breathed, Jiwan could see rows of crystalline teeth. To his left sat a being of pure gas, contained in a force field shaped roughly like a sphere. This was the Vel Consortium's representative. To his right, a mass of insects moving as one formed the Threx Collective's delegate. The other 2 council members were equally alien. A crystalline being that sang instead of spoke, and an amphibious creature that floated in a sphere of water. Krell's voice boomed across the chamber without any visible means of amplification. "Humans, You have been observed for 50 of your years. You have been found. Interesting. The way he said the last word made it sound like an insult. You may present yourselves. Jiwon stepped forward onto the platform. Her voice was steady despite her fear. She had rehearsed this speech 1,000 times. She spoke about Earth, about humanity's journey from the caves to the stars. She talked about their art, their music, their science. She explained their diversity, their capacity for change, their desire for peace. She spoke for 20 minutes. The council members did not interrupt. They barely moved. When she finished, there was silence. It stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Krell leaned forward slightly. Your species has fought 562 wars in the last 2,000 years. You have created weapons capable of destroying your own world 17 times over. You have only achieved global peace for 37 years. This is what you call capacity for change? Jiwon's prepared responses fled from her mind. Yes, we have a violent past. But we've learned from it. We've grown beyond it. That's why we're here. To prove that we can be better. The crystalline being sang something that the translator rendered as cold laughter. The Vel representative's gases swirled in what might have been contempt. Krell stood, and his full height was terrifying. The council has reviewed your application for membership. We have analyzed your species thoroughly. Our decision is final. He paused, and Jiwon felt hope rise in her chest. Maybe they had seen something good in humanity. Maybe this would work. Humanity is denied entry to the Galactic Council. Furthermore, you are classified as a potential threat to galactic stability. Your volatility, your aggression, your unpredictable nature makes you unsuitable for civilized space. Jiwon felt the words like physical blows. Please, if you just give us a chance. The decision is made, Krell interrupted. However, there is one more matter. This envoy cannot be allowed to return. You have seen too much. You have learned too much. You must be contained as an example to your species. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, humanity will be ready. Minho stepped forward, hand reaching for the communicator on his wrist. You can't just. The enforcers appeared from nowhere, sleek drones that moved faster than human eyes could follow. Blue light erupted from their weapons. Jiwon didn't even have time to scream. She felt herself coming apart at the molecular level, consciousness scattering like dust in wind. Her last thought was of Earth, of home, of the warning that needed to be sent. Hiron died next, her cry of protest cut short. Minho managed 3 seconds longer than his companions. His fingers found the emergency beacon on his communicator. He pressed it with the last of his strength, sending a burst transmission toward Earth. One word. Protocol. The ship exploded silently in the void. Debris scattered and burned in the neutron star's gravity well. Within an hour, there was nothing left. No evidence that humans had ever been there at all. In the council chambers, Krell settled back into his throne. Notify their homeworld that their envoy was lost to a navigation error. Express appropriate regrets. This matter is concluded. The other council members nodded their agreement. Another potential threat eliminated before it could grow. Another species put in its place. They had done this 40 times before over their long history. It was, they believed, for the good of the galaxy. They had no idea what they had just started. The message arrived at Earth Defense Command at 0347 hours, local time. It was fragmented, corrupted by distance and damage, but the encryption was unmistakable. Captain Minho's personal code, the one that could not be faked or duplicated. The communications officer who received it stared at his screen for 5 full seconds before hitting the priority alert. General Taehyun was in the shower when his emergency communicator began screaming. He was dressed and in his command car within 3 minutes. The vehicle raced through the empty streets of Seoul, its siren silent but its lights painting the buildings in red and blue. He knew what the alert pattern meant. It was the one that everyone hoped would never come. The command center was buried 2 kilometers beneath the Korean peninsula, carved from solid rock and wrapped in enough shielding to survive a nuclear strike. Taehyun arrived to find his staff already assembled. The main display showed the fragment of Minho's transmission, playing on repeat. The audio was mostly static, but 3 words came through clearly. Council. Hostile. Protocol. Minister Sora arrived 15 minutes later, still in her civilian clothes, her hair uncombed. She was the government's oversight director, the person who was supposed to keep the military from doing anything insane. She looked at the transmission and went pale. This could be a mistake. A misunderstanding. We need to send another ship, establish contact, find out what really happened. Taehyun said nothing. He simply pulled up another file and projected it on the main screen. It was the automatic telemetry from the Sejong's promise, transmitted continuously until the moment the ship ceased to exist. The data was clear. The ship had docked successfully at the council station. Life signs had remained stable for 43 minutes. Then, in less than 2 seconds, all 3 human life signs had terminated. The ship's reactor had gone critical 30 seconds later. That's not an accident, said Admiral Daeho, his voice flat. He commanded the Pacific Fleet, the largest concentration of military power on Earth. That's an execution. Around the table sat representatives from every major nation. Earth had been unified in government for only 30 years, and the old tensions still existed beneath the surface. But right now, everyone's face showed the same expression, cold rage mixed with fear. Colonel Eunji spoke next. She ran special tactics, the units that didn't officially exist and performed operations that were never acknowledged. The Annihilation protocol was designed for exactly this scenario. First contact goes catastrophically wrong. An existential threat presents itself. We have to assume that if they killed our envoy, they plan to come for Earth next. We don't know that. Sora protested, but her voice was weak. Maybe they just wanted to frighten us, to warn us off, by murdering our diplomats? Taehyun's voice was quiet, but everyone in the room heard him perfectly. By destroying an unarmed ship that came in peace. Minister, what warning do you think they're sending? It seems very clear to me. The Annihilation Protocol had been proposed 20 years ago, after humanity's first detection of the Galactic Council. Some people, the optimists, believed first contact would be peaceful. Others, the realists, knew that the universe was not kind. They had pushed for a backup plan. A contingency. A way to ensure that if the galaxy wanted humanity dead, humanity would make them pay a price they would never forget. It had taken 15 years to build. Facilities hidden on the moon, on Mars, in asteroid belts. Weapons research that violated every treaty humanity had ever signed with itself. Missiles that could cross light years in weeks, bombs that could crack planets, viruses designed to kill alien biology. Ships built for one purpose: destruction. Earth's governments had agreed to it quietly, shamefully, hoping it would never be needed. They had buried the budget in civilian research. They had told lies to their own people, and now, the moment they had dreaded was here. We need to vote, Taehyun said. The protocol requires unanimous agreement from the Joint Chiefs and majority consent from the Civilian Oversight Board. Everyone in this room needs to decide. Do we activate, or do we hope they leave us alone? The discussion lasted for 2 hours. Some argued for caution, for trying diplomacy again. Others pointed out that diplomacy had gotten 3 good people killed. Some worried about the morality of what the protocol would do. Others asked what morality meant when facing extinction. In the end, the vote was taken by silent ballot. Taehyun counted them himself, his face expressionless. When he looked up, everyone knew the answer. 17 in favor, 4 against. The Annihilation Protocol is active as of this moment. May God have mercy on us all, because the galaxy won't. Sora was one of the 4 who had voted no. She looked like she might be sick. You understand what you're doing? The casualties will be in the trillions. We'll be starting a war with civilizations thousands of years older than us. They started it, said Eunji coldly. We're just going to finish it. Taehyun moved to a console that had never been used before. It required 3 simultaneous key inputs, spread far enough apart that one person could not reach them all. He nodded to Admiral Daeho and Colonel Eunji. They moved to their positions. On Taehyun's count, all 3 turned their keys at once. Across the solar system, systems began to wake up. On the lunar far side, a facility disguised as a mining operation opened massive doors. Inside, 300 stealth missiles armed themselves and began their launch sequence. Each one carried a payload that could destroy a city. They were designed to be invisible, undetectable, impossible to stop. On Mars, in the Valles Marineras Canyon system, Shipyards that officially didn't exist began moving their products out of storage. The ships were black, angular, covered in materials that absorbed everything from visible light to radar. They were not designed for exploration or trade. They were designed to kill. In the asteroid belt, fabrication stations started producing ammunition at maximum capacity. Railgun slugs, missiles, mines, everything an interstellar war would need. The resources of an entire solar system, dedicated to one purpose. Taehyun pulled up a tactical display. Phase 1 is decapitation. We identify their leadership, their command structures, their decision-makers. We hit them all at once, faster than they can respond. We cut the head off the snake. Phase 2 is devastation, continued Daeho. We destroy their ability to make war, shipyards, resource stations, military bases. We don't give them time to organize a defense. Phase 3 is dominion, finished Yoonji. We dictate terms. Total surrender or total annihilation. No middle ground. A young officer raised his hand hesitantly. Sir, how do we know where their targets are? We barely know anything about Council space. Taehyun smiled without humor. You think we sent one ship to make contact? We've had stealth probes watching them for 15 years. We know where their homeworlds are. We know where their fleets gather. We know their infrastructure better than they think. We've been preparing for this since the day we knew they existed. The first wave launched 6 hours later. 300 missiles, each traveling at 90% of light speed. Their targets were spread across 50 light-years of space. The Korthan homeworld, the Vel gas harvesting stations, the Threx hive worlds, the Luminar gardens, the Orden ocean planets, every major population center of every council species. Every place where their leadership lived, where their decisions were made, where they felt safe. The missiles would take weeks to arrive. There was no way to recall them once launched, no way to stop what was coming. Earth went dark after the launch, ceasing all broadcasts, recalling every probe and satellite. To the galaxy, humanity had gone silent. In the command center, Sora watched the tactical display with tears running down her face. Each missile track represented billions of lives that would end. We've become monsters, she whispered. Taehyun heard her. No, Minister. We've become survivors. There's a difference. Deep in the facility, technicians monitored the weapon systems. One of them, a young woman named Yuna, watched the countdown timers with a sick feeling in her stomach. She thought about Ji-won, who had been her professor at university. Ji-won had taught her that diplomacy could solve anything, that words were stronger than weapons. Ji-won had been wrong. The missiles traveled through the dark between stars, invisible and patient. They carried simple payloads, just kinetic energy, mass moving at relativistic speeds, no explosives needed. When they hit, the impact alone would release more energy than nuclear weapons. Cities would vaporize. Continents would burn. Planets would die. Behind them came the fleet. 200 warships, crewed by volunteers who understood they might never come home. They carried weapons that humanity had promised itself it would never build. Entropy accelerators, quantum shredders, viral agents designed to target alien biology. Captain Junho commanded the lead ship. He had served under Minho, had considered him a friend. He recorded a message to be sent if he died. We came in peace. They answered with murder. What we do now is justice. Remember that. Whatever history says about us, remember that we wanted peace. They chose war. In 6 weeks, the first missiles would arrive at their targets. In 6 weeks, the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. In 6 weeks, trillions would die because 3 people had been killed. It was not proportional. It was not fair. But Taehyun had made his decision. If the galaxy wanted to see humanity's violent nature, wanted to see what they were capable of when threatened, then the galaxy would get exactly that. Earth's oceans reflected a quiet sky. On the streets, people went about their lives, not knowing that their species had just started a war that would reshape the galaxy. The government kept it quiet. No announcements, no warnings, just silence. And in that silence, weapons traveled through the void, counting down to the moment when the Council would understand their mistake. 6 weeks after the activation, High Arbiter Krell sat in his private chambers reviewing trade disputes. The room was luxurious, filled with treasures from 1,000 conquered worlds. He had already forgotten about the human incident. It was a minor matter, barely worth recording. Just another primitive species that needed to be taught its place. The alert came at what Krell's species considered midday. His personal aide rushed in, scales flashing colors that indicated extreme distress. Arbiter, we're detecting objects inbound to Zinthros. 13 contacts, moving at 0.9 light speed. Impact in 70 seconds. Krell stood slowly. 0.9 light speed was impossible. No species used kinetic weapons at those velocities. The energy required was absurd. Activate planetary shields. Deploy the defense grid. Already active, Arbiter. The objects are too small for our targeting systems to lock on. They're just rods. Metal rods. Krell felt the first touch of fear. Evacuate the transmission from Zinthros cut off. One moment. His homeworld was there. 3 billion Korthan living their lives in the 3 great cities that had stood for 5,000 years. The next moment, there was nothing but static. When the signal reconnected, Krell saw hell. The first rod had hit the capital city at 90% of light speed. The impact released energy equivalent to 1,000 nuclear weapons. The city had not exploded. It had simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a fraction of a second. A crater 100 kilometers wide had replaced it, glowing white-hot. The other 12 rods had struck in a pattern. The second and third cities, the government centers, the military bases, the spaceports. Each impact was identical, clean, precise, devastating. But the rods had not stopped at the surface. They had punched through the crust, into the mantle. Seismic sensors showed what was happening. The planet's tectonic plates were fracturing. Volcanoes were erupting along every fault line. Zinthros would tear itself apart within days. Krell stared at the displays, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. 3 billion of his people. Dead. Just like that. No warning. No demand for surrender. Just instant, overwhelming death. His communicator lit up with priority alerts. The Vel Consortium's harvesting stations had been hit. The Threx hive worlds were under attack. The Luminar gardens were burning. The Orden ocean platforms were sinking. Every council species struck simultaneously. This was not random raiders. This was coordinated. This was planned. This was revenge. The humans. Krell whispered. It's the humans. Tactical coordinator Jiho watched the strike results from the stealth carrier Docto's Wrath. The ship hung in deep space. Invisible to every sensor the council possessed. His screens showed 13 successful impacts on Zinthros, 0 defensive response, perfect execution. His second officer, Lieutenant Nari, looked sick. She had calculated the casualty numbers. Sir, we just killed 3 billion civilians. That's not a military target. That's genocide. Jiho's face was stone. They killed 3 unarmed diplomats. They declared humans too dangerous to live. They showed us what they think of mercy. He pressed a button, sending new coordinates to the weapon systems. Launch Phase 2. The carrier's missile tubes opened silently in the vacuum. 150 missiles launched, each one locked on a different target. Council military stations, supply depots, ship construction yards, the infrastructure of their power. Across human space, 200 warships emerged from quantum stealth. They had been hiding in the dark between stars, waiting for this moment. Now they moved to attack positions, their weapons charged and ready. The Council's fleets scrambled to respond. Centuries-old dreadnoughts powered up their engines. Fighter wings launched from carriers. Defense grids activated around core worlds. They were slow, confused, but they were vast. The Council commanded 10,000 warships, veterans of 100 wars against primitive species. Against Earth's 200 ships, it should have been a massacre. The Council expected an easy victory. They were wrong. The human electronic warfare started first. Every Council ship that activated its weapons systems suddenly found its computers screaming errors. Their targeting solutions vanished, their communications filled with static. Their shields flickered and failed. Humanity had spent 15 years analyzing Council technology from stolen probes and intercepted transmissions. They knew every weakness, every flaw, every backdoor. When the Council ships were blind and deaf, the human weapons opened fire. Entropy cannons hit first. They did not destroy ships in the traditional sense. Instead, they accelerated time around the target, a Council dreadnought aged 1,000,000 years in seconds, its hull corroding to rust, its systems failing from decay that should have taken eons. Quantum shredders followed. These weapons reached into multiple dimensions simultaneously, tearing apart the molecular bonds that held matter together. Ships did not explode. They simply stopped existing, erased from reality, as if they had never been built. But the most terrifying weapons were the echo bombs. When they detonated, they created a recursive explosion. Each blast triggered another, slightly larger. In an exponential chain reaction, a single echo bomb could destroy an entire fleet if the ships were close enough together. The Council learned this when they tried to mass their forces for a coordinated defense. Fleet Commander Bora led the assault on the Orden Sovereignty's orbital shipyards. Her battle group consisted of 12 ships against a defense force of 200. The odds should have been impossible. Instead, it was a slaughter. Her flagship's artificial intelligence, more advanced than anything the Council possessed, calculated firing solutions faster than organic minds could process. Her railguns fired solid slugs at relativistic speeds. No energy shields could stop them. No armor could deflect them. Each shot punched through Council ships like they were made of paper. When an Orden dreadnought tried to ram her vessel, Bora's pilot simply increased power to the gravity drive. The human ship accelerated at forces that would have killed any Council species. Humans, modified with advanced medical technology and protected by inertial dampeners, could withstand over 50 times Earth gravity for short periods. The Orden ship couldn't keep up. It fell behind, and Bora's rear weapons crippled it in passing. She did not stop to finish it off. There were more important targets. The shipyard was massive, a construction facility that could build 100 vessels simultaneously. It was defended by mines, automated weapons, and 3 full battle groups. Bora's small fleet hit it from 4 directions at once, using tactics the Council had never seen. They were fast, aggressive, unpredictable. Human pilots flew like madmen, taking risks that no sane being would attempt. They performed maneuvers that violated basic physics. They fought like they had nothing to lose. Because Earth had made it clear. This war would be won, or humanity would die trying. There was no middle ground. In 15 minutes, the shipyard was gone. In 20 minutes, the defense fleet was destroyed. Bora's ships took damage but nothing critical. She broadcast on all human channels. Remember, G1. From 200 ships, 10,000 voices answered in unison. Remember, G1. The battle spread across Council space. Human forces were outnumbered 50-1, but numbers meant nothing when technology and tactics were so mismatched. The Council fought like they always had. With formations and honor and established protocols, humanity fought dirty, using every trick, every advantage, every weapon they could create. When Council ships tried to regroup, human infiltration teams bombed their rally points. When they tried to resupply, their supply lines were cut. When they tried to communicate, their channels were jammed. When they tried to retreat, they found human minds waiting in every logical escape route. The Council had fought wars before, but they had always been against species less advanced than themselves. They had crushed rebellions and punished upstarts. They had never faced an enemy who understood war as fundamentally as humanity did. Humans had been killing each other for thousands of years. They had perfected the art of warfare through countless conflicts. They knew strategy and tactics in their bones, and now they were using all that bloody experience against aliens who thought themselves superior. In the first week, the Council lost 7,000 ships. Humanity lost 32. The exchange ratio was catastrophic for the supposed rulers of the galaxy. On the Luminar homeworld, a crystalline being named Shivar watched her species' war fleet die. The beautiful crystal gardens that had taken millennia to grow were burning, their structures shattered by human weapons. She tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be easy to contain. Instead, they were a nightmare made real. They fought without honor, without mercy, without any of the rules that civilized warfare was supposed to follow. They targeted civilians as readily as soldiers. They destroyed irreplaceable cultural treasures without hesitation. They seemed to want to hurt the Council, not just defeat it. Shivar sent a message to the Council's emergency session. We need to surrender. We need to stop this before there's nothing left to save. The response from Acting Arbiter Velshara was cold. We do not surrender to primitives. Rally your forces. We will crush them with numbers if necessary. But the numbers were dying. Every day, more Council worlds went dark. Every day, more fleets were destroyed. Every day, humanity pushed deeper into Council space, burning and killing and destroying everything in their path. Jiho received updated orders from Earth. General Taehyun's message was brief. No mercy, no prisoners, no quarter. They wanted to see what we're capable of. Show them everything. Looking at his tactical display, at the burning worlds and shattered fleets, Jiho felt something close to satisfaction. This was for Jiwon, who had wanted peace. This was for Hyeren, who had wanted to learn. This was for Minho, who had died trying to warn his people. This was humanity's answer to the question of whether they were too dangerous for civilized space. The answer was yes, but the Council had made the mistake of thinking that meant humanity would roll over and accept death. Instead, humanity had decided that if they were going to die, they would take the entire galaxy with them. 3 months into the war, the galaxy was burning. 17 Council worlds had been reduced to lifeless rocks. Their fleets were scattered debris floating in space. Refugee ships fled in every direction, carrying survivors to anywhere that might be safe from human weapons. Trillions were dead. Trillions more were displaced, homeless, watching their civilizations collapse. The Emergency Council session met in a hidden location, a small station orbiting a dead star. They had learned that nowhere was truly safe from human surveillance, but they had to meet. What remained of the 5 elder species gathered to face a truth they had refused to accept. Acting Arbiter Velshara floated in her containment sphere, her gases swirling with patterns that indicated deep distress. Around her, the surviving representatives of the Council species looked equally devastated. High Arbiter Krell was dead, killed when human commandos had collapsed the original Council chambers. Half the governing body was gone. A Threx representative, its carapace scarred from a near miss by human weapons, clicked its mandibles rapidly. How is this possible? Our intelligence said Earth was primitive, barely 50 years into space travel. Their technology should have been centuries behind ours. A new voice spoke from the shadows. Intelligence Director Kangmin stepped forward, his human features calm. Despite being surrounded by aliens who wanted his species dead, he had infiltrated Council space months before the war started, blending in at remote stations, gathering data. Now he had come to deliver the truth. You never understood us, Kangmin said quietly. You looked at our technology and saw primitives. You measured us by your standards and found us lacking. But you never asked the important question. Why did we develop the way we did? Velshara's gases flared. You dare come here? You are human. Your kind has destroyed everything we built, and you killed our diplomats. You murdered 3 unarmed people who came in peace. Did you think there would be no consequences? Kangmin activated a holographic display. I've come to show you something. Information we pulled from your own databases. Maybe it will help you understand why we're so good at killing you. The display showed historical records, ancient files that the Council kept locked away. Kangmin began to narrate. 40 times. 40 different species over the last 5,000 years. All of them deemed too dangerous, too volatile, too aggressive. All of them visited by Council diplomats. All of them rejected. All of them destroyed. The Luminar representative, her crystalline form dim with shock, sang a questioning tone. What are you talking about? The Trell? The Vonari? The Kesh? The Zaphon Collective? Kangmin listed names that meant nothing to most people in the galaxy. All extinct, all killed by Council peacekeeping forces, before they could become threats. You've done this before, over and over. You evaluate species, and if they don't meet your standards, you eliminate them. Preventative genocide. The records showed it all. Species found to be too warlike, too expansionist, too unpredictable. Each one had received the same treatment: diplomatic contact, evaluation, rejection, and finally extermination. The Council had perfected the process over millennia. They called it maintaining galactic stability. A Korthan officer hissed in denial. Those species were threats. They would have brought chaos, like humanity. Kang Min's voice was cold. We came in peace. We offered friendship. We wanted to learn, to share, to join your community, and you killed our envoy because you decided we might be dangerous someday. You didn't give us a chance. You just executed us and expected us to accept it. He changed the display to show Earth's preparations. The hidden shipyards. The weapons research. The decades of planning. We knew this might happen. We studied your history. We saw the pattern. We understood that first contact could go wrong, so we prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. You planned for war, Velshara accused. We planned to survive. Kang Min corrected. And when you murdered our diplomats, we activated those plans. Everything you're experiencing now, we built it specifically for this scenario. We spent 50 years imagining how to fight a superior galactic civilization. We ran simulations. We tested theories. We created weapons designed to kill species we'd never met. The council members looked at each other in horror. The Threx clicked nervously. You're monsters. You prepare for war as a matter of course. Kang Min laughed, the sound bitter. Yes. We're violent. We're aggressive. We've spent our entire history fighting each other. And you know what that taught us? How to fight, how to win, how to survive against impossible odds. You've had peace for 1,000 years. It made you weak. We've had war for 10,000 years. It made us lethal. He transmitted the data files to all their systems. I'm giving you this information freely. Share it with your people. Let them know what their government has been doing. Let them know that the council has been committing genocide for millennia. All in the name of stability. Maybe they'll understand why we won't stop until you're broken. Before they could respond, Kang Min activated a personal shield and disappeared in a flash of light. Teleportation technology. Another human innovation the council hadn't known existed. He was gone before they could capture him. The data he left behind spread like fire through council space. Every species under their rule saw the records. 40 civilizations, destroyed before they could threaten the established order. The council had been lying for thousands of years, presenting themselves as benevolent rulers while secretly murdering anyone who didn't fit their vision of a safe galaxy. Rebellions started within days. The Korthan subject species, who had been oppressed for centuries, saw Earth's war as inspiration. If humans could fight back against impossible odds, why couldn't they? The Vel's client states began refusing orders. The Threx's slave hives revolted. The Luminar's vassal worlds declared independence. The galaxy fractured. The Council's authority collapsed. Species that had coexisted peacefully for 1,000 years under Council rule suddenly found old grievances resurfacing. Without the Council's iron grip, chaos spread. On Earth, Minister Sora confronted General Taehyun. In his command center, she looked haggard, having not slept properly in weeks. We've killed 20 trillion beings. 20 trillion. When does it stop, General? When is enough blood spilled? Taehyun looked older than his years. The war was costing him too. Every casualty report, every destroyed world, every civilian death sat on his shoulders, but his voice remained firm. When they surrender unconditionally, when they guarantee our safety, when they admit what they did and accept punishment for it, at this rate, there won't be a council left to punish. Then maybe that's the point. Taehyun pulled up a strategic display. Look at this, Minister. Really look at it. The Council has ruled for 5,000 years. They've killed 40 species, enslaved hundreds more, and maintained power through fear and overwhelming force. They're not the good guys. They never were. Neither are we, Sora said quietly. Not anymore. Intelligence Director Kang Min's report had reached Earth. The truth about the Council's past was now common knowledge. Human media broadcast it constantly. The 40 species who had been destroyed, the pattern of preventative genocide, the lies and cover-ups. Public opinion on Earth shifted. The war had started with mourning for Jiwon, Hyerin, and Minho. It had continued with rage at the Council's arrogance. Now it became something else, a crusade to break a tyrannical power that had murdered its way to the top of galactic civilization. Colonel Unji used the information in her tactical briefings. Every Council facility we destroy weakens their grip on the galaxy. Every fleet we eliminate means one less tool of oppression. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every species that never got a chance because the Council killed them first. Her special forces teams intensified their operations. They began freeing slave species, arming rebel groups, and spreading the information about Council crimes to every corner of the galaxy. Earth's war evolved from simple revenge into something more complex. Liberation, revolution, the complete dismantling of the existing galactic order. The Council tried to respond, but they were fracturing from within. Their member species were arguing among themselves. Some wanted to surrender, to beg humanity for mercy. Others wanted to fight to the last, to die rather than submit to primitives. None of them could agree on a unified strategy. Acting Arbiter Velshara called for a vote on surrendering to human demands. The motion failed. Pride and fear warred in the Council's collective mind. They could not imagine bending knee to a species they had dismissed as barbaric, but the alternative was extinction. Human forces showed no sign of stopping. Every week brought new attacks, new devastation, new proof that the Council could not win this war. Their technological advantage had evaporated. Their numerical superiority meant nothing against human tactics. Their ancient authority was crumbling. In a small apartment on Earth, a woman named Yuna watched the news broadcasts. She had been the technician who monitored the first missile launch. She had pushed the buttons that sent kinetic weapons toward Zinthros. The deaths of 3 billion Korthan were partly her responsibility. She had nightmares now, dreams of burning worlds and dying aliens. But she also remembered Jiwan, her old professor, who had believed so strongly in peace. Jiwan would have been horrified by what humanity was doing. But Jiwan was dead, killed by the people she had tried to befriend. Yuna didn't know if the war was right or wrong anymore. She just knew it was necessary. The Council had shown what they thought of peaceful humans. They had to learn that violent humans were something else entirely. The galaxy burned, and in the burning, old powers fell and new questions arose. What would replace the Council? What kind of civilization would emerge from the ashes, and could humanity live with what they had become in order to survive? Those questions had no easy answers. But they would have to be answered soon, because the war was entering its final phase. 8 months after Jiwan's death, the war ended not with a grand battle but with a whimper. The last Council fleet surrendered in the ruins of what had been the Vel Consortium's capital station. Acting Arbiter Velshara transmitted the unconditional surrender personally. Her gaseous form visibly diminished by stress and defeat. The terms were harsh. The Council was dissolved permanently. The elder species would submit to human oversight for a minimum of 50 years. War crimes tribunals would be established to prosecute those responsible for the 40 previous genocides. Reparations would be paid to every species the Council had oppressed, and humanity would have final say on all matters of galactic security. Earth had won. The cost was almost incomprehensible. 23 trillion beings dead across both sides. 47 worlds rendered uninhabitable. Entire species reduced to scattered refugee populations. The galactic economy had collapsed. Trade routes were gone. The infrastructure of civilization lay in ruins. President Yuna stood before the cameras in the rebuilt Sol complex. She had been elected in an emergency vote after the previous government stepped down, unable to bear the weight of what they had authorized. She was young for a president, only 35. But the war had aged her like everyone else who had lived through it. Her speech was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Human translators worked to convert her words into 1,000 languages. She spoke slowly, carefully, knowing that every word would be analyzed for generations to come. People of Earth and people of the galaxy, I speak to you today, not in triumph but in sorrow. We have won a war that should never have been fought. We have defeated an enemy that should have been our friend. The blood of trillions stains our hands, and that stain will never wash away. She paused, gathering herself. We did not want this. Ambassador Jiwan, Dr. Hyron, and Captain Minho went to the Council in peace. They offered friendship, cooperation, and mutual respect. They were murdered for it. The Council decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist, and they tried to eliminate us before we could become a threat. The holographic displays behind her showed images of the 3 envoys. Their smiling faces were a stark contrast to the devastation the war had brought. They were right to fear us, but not for the reasons they thought. We are dangerous. We are violent. We are capable of terrible things when threatened. But we are also capable of change, of growth. of becoming something better than our worst impulses. Yuna's voice strengthened. To the species watching, we offer a choice. Join us in building something new, a federation where no species rules over others, where diversity is celebrated, not feared, where disputes are settled through dialogue, not genocide, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. She looked directly into the camera. Or stand aside. Rebuild in isolation if you prefer. We will not force you into our alliance. But hear this clearly. Never threaten humanity again. Never attempt to wipe us out. Never mistake our desire for peace as weakness. We will defend ourselves with every weapon at our disposal. And as this war has proven, our arsenal is more terrible than you imagined. The speech continued for 20 more minutes, outlining the framework for the new galactic order. When it ended, reactions were mixed. Some species saw it as the beginning of a new era. Others saw it as humanity replacing one tyranny with another. Time would tell which interpretation was correct. General Taehyun did not attend the speech. He had resigned his commission the day the war ended, unable to continue serving after authorizing so much death. He retreated to a small house in the mountains, far from Seoul and the government and the memories. Colonel Eunji visited him there 3 weeks later. She found him tending a garden, growing vegetables in soil that had never seen war. He looked peaceful, but his eyes were haunted. They want you to testify at the tribunals, Eunji said without preamble. Explain the decision to activate the protocol. Taehyun didn't look up from his plants. I'll tell them the truth. We chose survival over morality. We chose vengeance over restraint. We chose to become monsters because the alternative was extinction. Whether that was right or wrong, history will decide. I'm done making those decisions. The president is forming the new Terran Defense Force. She wants you to lead it. No. The word was flat, final. I've killed enough. Let someone else carry that weight. Eunji nodded slowly. She understood. The war had broken something in Taehyun, some fundamental belief that wars could be fought honorably. He had ordered the deaths of trillions, had authorized weapons that violated every principle of proportional response, had turned Earth into the very thing the Council had feared. The victory rang hollow. She left him to his garden and returned to Seoul. The new defense force would be her responsibility then. Earth would need protection, while the galaxy rebuilt. Too many species still harbored resentment, still wanted revenge for their losses. The peace would be fragile for years, possibly decades. On the moon, Europa, construction had finished on the memorial. It was a massive structure, visible from orbit. At its center stood statues of Jiwon, Hyerin, and Minho. Carved from a single piece of asteroid metal, they were depicted as they had been in life. Hopeful, intelligent, peaceful, reaching toward the stars. Beneath the statues, an inscription had been carved in every known language. They died seeking peace. We avenged them with war. May those who come after us find the balance we could not. Dr. Sunwoo, a historian who had been too young to fight in the war, led tours of the memorial for school groups. Children from Earth and from a dozen other species listened as he explained what had happened, why the war had started, and what it had cost. Some people call this humanity's darkest hour. He told a group of students, they say we revealed our true nature as violent, vengeful beings. Others call it our finest hour. They say we proved that humanity will never accept subjugation, will never surrender, will fight to the last rather than die quietly. A young girl raised her hand. She was Korthan, one of the orphans humanity had taken in after Zinthros had died. Which one is right, teacher? Sunwoo smiled sadly. Both. Neither. The truth is complicated. We did terrible things for what we believed were good reasons. We killed billions to save ourselves. We destroyed civilizations to prevent our own destruction. Whether that was justified, each of you will have to decide for yourselves. He showed them footage from the war, the burning worlds, the shattered fleets, the refugee ships fleeing human weapons. Then he showed them footage from before, the Council's crimes, the species they had exterminated, the lies they had told. The children watched in silence, trying to understand. The galaxy was broken before humanity joined it, Sunwoo explained. The Council maintained order through fear and violence. They killed anyone who threatened their power. We didn't break the galaxy. We just revealed how broken it already was. On the Luminar homeworld, what remained of it, a crystalline being named Shivar worked to rebuild. Half her species was gone. Their crystal forms shattered by human weapons. The beautiful gardens that had taken millennia to grow were ruined. But life continued. She had been one of the council members who voted to kill the human envoy. She had believed it was necessary, that humanity was too dangerous to allow into civilized space. Now she understood how wrong she had been, not because humans weren't dangerous, but because trying to eliminate them had unleashed that danger on everyone. Shivar had accepted the surrender terms. She worked with human administrators now, helping to distribute aid to her people. The humans were surprisingly generous in victory, providing food and medicine and resources for rebuilding. It confused her. How could beings capable of such destruction also be capable of such compassion? She asked this question to Ambassador Insu, Jiwan's former deputy, who now led Earth's diplomatic corps. He had survived the war working behind the scenes, trying to minimize casualties where possible, arguing for restraint when he could. Insu considered the question carefully. We're contradictory. We can be the best of beings and the worst of beings simultaneously. We can show mercy and commit atrocities. We can build and destroy. That's what the Council never understood about us. We're not one thing. We're capable of everything. The Free Species Alliance formed 6 months after the war ended. It was messy and argumentative and chaotic, with 100 different species all trying to have their voices heard at once. There were no elder races dictating terms, no ancient authority maintaining order. Just a collection of civilizations trying to figure out how to coexist without someone forcing them to. Humanity held significant influence due to their military power, but they shared authority with dozens of other species. The Korthan, reduced but not destroyed, brought their administrative expertise. The Threx contributed their collective decision-making processes. The Luminar offered their philosophical traditions. The Vel shared their resource management techniques. It was imperfect. Disputes arose constantly. Some species refused to join, preferring isolation. Others joined and then left when they didn't get their way. But it was genuine. For the first time in galactic history, species were cooperating as equals rather than subjects and rulers. Minister Sora, who had opposed the war from the beginning, found herself managing the Alliance's Civilian Oversight Board. It was ironic. She had tried to prevent the destruction, had voted against the protocol, and now she was helping to build something from the ruins. She visited the memorial on Europa regularly. Standing before the statues of the 3 envoys, she whispered apologies. We failed you. You wanted peace, and we gave you war. But we're trying to honor your memory. We're building the galaxy you dreamed of, even if we had to burn down the old one to make room for it. The galaxy slowly healed. Trade routes reopened. Refugee populations found new homes. The scars remained, visible from space on worlds that would take centuries to recover, but life adapted, as it always did. On Earth, the debate continued about what the war meant. Artists created works exploring the themes of survival and morality. Philosophers argued about whether the ends had justified the means. Politicians used it as an example for everything from justified defense to dangerous militarism. Yuna, the technician who had launched the first missiles, wrote a book about her experience. It became required reading in schools across human space. In it, she grappled with the question that haunted her. How many innocent lives was Earth worth? She never found an answer she was satisfied with, but she concluded that asking the question was important, even if answering it was impossible. We must never become comfortable with what we did, she wrote. The moment we accept it without question, the moment we stop feeling guilt, is the moment we become the monsters the Council feared. General Taehyun died quietly 5 years after the war ended. He was found in his garden, a small smile on his face, having passed peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, thousands came to pay respects. Some honored him as the savior of humanity. Others condemned him as a war criminal. Most recognized him as simply a man who had made impossible choices in impossible circumstances. President Yuna gave the eulogy. He carried the weight so the rest of us didn't have to. He made the decision that saved our species and cost him his soul. History will judge him harshly, as it should judge all of us who lived through those days. But let history also remember that he did what he believed was necessary when extinction was the alternative. The galaxy moved forward. New generations were born who had never known the Council's rule or humanity's war. They grew up in a universe where species cooperated as equals, where disputes were solved through negotiation, where the strong defended the weak instead of exploiting them. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was better than what had come before. And perhaps that was enough. The 3 envoys had died seeking a better galaxy. Humanity had built one from the ashes of the old, even if the construction had required more blood than anyone wanted to spill. Ambassador Jiwan's dream of a peaceful first contact had failed, but her dream of humanity joining the galactic community as equals had succeeded. Just not in the way she had imagined. Sometimes the path to peace led through war. Sometimes you had to burn everything down to build something better. The stars shone on, indifferent to the brief struggles of the species beneath them. The galaxy continued its slow rotation, carrying new stories and new civilizations into an uncertain future. And on Europa, the memorial stood watch, reminding everyone who passed of the price that had been paid and the promise that had been made. Never again would peaceful envoys be murdered. Never again would species be eliminated for being different. Never again would the powerful subjugate the weak without consequence. The galaxy had learned what humanity was capable of when threatened. Now it was learning what humanity was capable of when building. The second lesson, everyone hoped, would be remembered longer than the first.